Hello everybody. Today we are going to be walking around the Team Fortress 2 map, Hydro. For this hydroelectric dam that the map is centered around. So, I was going to do the last three original, release TF2 maps for this video. But Hydro is pretty big. It's got a lot of unique areas. So I thought it deserved its own video. And I listened to the developer commentary on this map. So I'll have a few little factoids and such to discuss as we explore. But here we have the dam itself rearing up in front of us. Danger, high voltage, keep out, keep out. And, actually, if you have any interest in the developer commentary, it's just occurring to me that maybe a fun video would be I just read all of the developer commentary, basically going around the maps that have commentary and playing the commentary, but then just voicing the commentary myself in a, ASMR fashion. Let me know if that would be interesting to you, but for today we're doing a more traditional map exploration. So we have this sort of omnipresent chalkboard that appears very often in TF2's kind of backroom interior environments, spawn areas and such. It's got quite the complicated mathematical formula on it. And we won't delve into that. We have a little water bubbler here, a little water fountain. And a scale. It would be fun if it functioned so we could compare how heavy the different characters are. Some ventilation, some hanging lights, and of course a girly calendar with the blue version of the calendar. This job has worked 0 days without an accident. Well, we can improve on that, That's good. There's always room for improvement. And I am walking around in the developer commentary mode just because Hydro is, it's broken up into smaller areas. And in the actual gameplay, you are restricted to one area at a time, but when you're doing the developer commentary, you can wander around freely, so it is helpful for us to see the whole map. Lots of windows in this map that we will be coming across, revealing some offices that we cannot access. Private. We have this little balcony area, useful for leaving the building. Of course, the open window, very useful for snipers. So down this path, this red rock tunnel, we will find our way to another area. The structure of Hydro is that it is divided into, I think 4 capture points, and the teams sort of battle to control these 4 capture points, and then you push your way to the enemy team's headquarters, their main base, and if you beat them there, you win the game. Here we have a sort of radar dish structure. Speed limit 15. That seems a little fast for how confined this area is. One of the things that they talked about in the developer commentary for this map is the color scheme of Hydro, because in most other maps in TF2, of the original maps, you had a color scheme that matched the teams. So, the attackers would start in a blue base, and they would sort of progressively push through an environment that transitioned from, more red to, more blue to more red, for instance. Or in, 2 Fort, you have the red base and the blue base, and it's very distinct color-wise, based on who is controlling, what area of the map. But for Hydro, the control of any given area could be held by, one team or the other. So they went with a more neutral color scheme throughout the map. They have the sort of a reddish-brown rocks forming the natural tones of the area. And then, the blue sky, and a lot of cool neutral tones in the buildings and such. Or the white neutral tones of the interiors, or like the radar dish area outside. This particular building that we are in is the red base specifically. If blue pushes their way all the way here, this is where the final round will happen. So here they did go all out with theming it in a more red direction. heavies, bullet bandolier, another scale, of course the supply cabinets to fully restock on health and ammo. And then coming out here, we have a lot of the sort of 50s spy stylized tech going on. Lots of tape and consoles with, blinking lights and such. And I like this little elevated dome area above the capture point. A ventilation shaft here provides another means of ingress into the area. And we can go find our way over there. There's a little shack up here that you can enter through that way. So, we have another little radar dish here, little satellite dish rather. The clouds in the distance, over the red, rocky desert expanse. It's a nice vista. They talk about in the developer commentary about the idea of conspicuous artificiality. Conspicuous artificiality. In Team Fortress 2, in their design philosophy. And what that means is not narratively justifying or not narratively, what's the word, just not justifying every gameplay element in a sort of in-universe way. And what I mean by that is invisible walls. And I'll point it out when we find some invisible walls, but they, we're struggling to find ways to block character progression in every direction, right? When it wasn't, you're inside where there's actual walls to block you, or you're in a deep canyon. And so their solution to this was just putting up small barriers that gestured at the fact that you couldn't go past, and then beyond the barrier putting a sort of barren expanse, which they found signaled to the playtesters well enough that there was no reason to try to go that way. Got some sort of muscle supplements in that jar up there. Steroids or something. Or who knows, maybe it's just creatine. The heavy just dry scoops a tablespoon of creatine every day. So down here we can see the distinction now that we are not in the red base. In the red base you have these sort of neutral gray-white tones, and then the red highlight sort of like on the bottom of the wall, whereas in the underground area there it remained gray throughout. There was no highlight of red or blue to suggest that this area was inherently tied to one side or the other. We have the capture point here in the small room, which, on the one hand has a lot of cover in that you're able to kind of hide behind the walls and peek out the windows, but is also a very concentrated area with high visibility in a sort of gameplay sense, where if you're capturing it, everybody knows that you're standing on the point. And so something like a soldier's rocket launcher, is very effective when fired through that window. Here is what I mean when they talk about the conspicuous artificiality. There's an invisible wall behind this little barrier here, but the barrier itself, combined with the emptiness beyond it, signaled well to playtesters that there was no reason to try to go over the barrier. And so that area circles back around to the dish here. And if we continue down this way, we find ourselves in the Red Rock Canyon. Here we have the heavy weapons guy. And another sort of major note that they hit on in the developer commentary is once they changed the art style of Team Fortress 2 from very realistic to heavily stylized, it unlocked a lot of, abilities for them. For example, you could have the heavy weapons guy be this huge, giant of a man in a very unrealistic way, and then put him right next to the spy in his pinstripe suit, where he seemed, he's so obviously not a person that would actually be on a battlefield. With his, balaclava and suit on, doesn't really make sense in a realistic setting. But once they stylized the game so heavily, it allowed you to make decisions like that, which then had the, further effect of indicating very clearly visually the differences between those characters. So at a glance, because the heavy is huge and the scout is kind of small and thin, that the heavy is probably slower, probably has more health, probably does more damage. And that the spy is probably, has less health, might move a bit faster, and you wouldn't expect him to be a frontline attacker. So, the stylization of Team Fortress 2 was, from the developer commentary, seemingly a very major breakthrough for the team. And when they talk about the art style, they mentioned being inspired by a painter from like the turn of the century, the 1900s, I think, J.C. Leindecker, who painted a lot of those very classic looking advertisements. And the people in his advertisements had very nice clothing, and the clothing was very, it had texture and form to it, but the characters also had very sharp silhouettes. So the creative team took some inspiration from that in how they designed their characters, giving them very sharp silhouettes while also, creating the right amount of texture and detail for the clothing. Here we have the pyro. The pyro. Oh, 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 oh. The pyro, of course, is very mysterious member of the team. Never takes their mask off. I remember, I'm pretty sure I said this in the last video, but I do remember when I was younger and TF2 was very popular. There was the big discussion about, is the pyro a boy or a girl? Is the pyro a man or a woman? So this area, in this capture point in the turbine room, you have a sort of a sequence of ventilation shaft passages. You can get vantage points into the room. You can move around more sneakily. And one thing that I noticed with how TF2 does the ventilation ducts and moving through them is that very often I find in, shooters, when you have these ventilation pathways or, these little secret tunnel areas that can move you around more sneakily, you often have to crouch and move at a slower pace. But in TF2, there is no crouching. You can just walk right into the ventilation shafts and move about with complete freedom. And I kind of like that, I think I see how you get to the game design decision of we should make players crouch to take this path because the path is safer, and so we should implement a cost to the safer path, and that's a smart choice. But making people slow down, I don't think it's really a big deal, but I think it's more exciting to just keep moving at your regular pace. And you can still implement a time penalty. You just do it in the geography of how you lay out the, those other passageways. You make them longer to run through than just going the direct route. So the time cost can still be implemented without making the player feel like they are actively slowing down, which could be a little annoying or frustrating or something. Although you could also make the argument that making that cost very visceral in that way allows the player to sort of more easily weigh the pros and cons of the different paths and make that decision with better information, so I don't know. But regardless of whether it's good or bad, it's just something that I noticed that I feel TF2 TF2 stands a little bit apart from in that respect. Which is funny because you can crouch. But as far as I can tell, it serves no practical function, or sort of no explicit game design function in TF2. Obviously, you can crouch behind cover and like lower your profile a little bit, or crouch jump to get a little more height, stuff like that. But yeah, it's just interesting. I like the Red Rock Canyon in Hydro. I think it looks very nice. So we have found our way back to the turbine area. And the blue base is over here. One of the developer commentary notes. That just as a fun fact, talks about one of the biggest design decisions in TF2 from a gameplay perspective was the decision to remove grenades, which, of course, in the first Team Fortress there were grenades. And in playtesting for TF2, what they found was, and this is something that you see in lots of games that have grenades, is grenade spam. So, in kind of two forms. First is just a whole team chucking their grenades through a door into a firefight area. And the other scenario is when a player is about to die, they just panic chuck grenades in the hopes of getting a kill after they die. And if you've played any games where grenades are just built straight into your toolkit, like Halo, for instance, that is a very common thing. So that doesn't surprise me that they encountered that in their playtesting. I remember playing Halo Infinite when that came out, and the grenades were just flying everywhere. And it's not like an objectively horrible thing, but it is something that you need to be aware of and just make a conscientious decision around. So, the games that I was playing in Halo Infinite could feel very chaotic when the frags were just flying. But sometimes that chaotic energy is kind of fun, so. But that was their rationale for removing the grenades, and I think it's a very fair one. Alpha electric, or something like that, electricity maybe. Can't see the second half of the word. I like this little side passage into the blue base. Going through that little alley with the junk piled up. And then you drop down into the blue base here. Kind of into a vulnerable position. Their resupply point is right in front of you, so enemies could be coming out of their spawn and see you right there with no cover. But it's certainly a useful flanking technique, or a route to have. So we see another very traditional TF2 locker room. This time with everything in the blue color scheme. Pigs, steel rods. A handful of these old posters around TF2, all this kind of older advertising style. Wait a minute. This is the red nudie girl. What is she doing in the blue locker room? There's a red spy. There's a red spy in the blue locker room. And he's putting up posters of his red ladies. He's the red spy. Watch. He'll turn red any second now. See? Red. No, wait. That's blood. It's from the Meet the Spy video, of course. Valve put out a series of promotional videos, sort of just fun videos for their character updates. And they were called, the Meet the video, so it was Meet the Heavy, Meet the Scout, Meet the Spy, Meet the Soldier, so on. And they started as almost like interview, like faux interview type videos, where the character would be talking to the camera, and then they would be interspersed with them, running around, killing people. And as the series went on, they became more just kind of straight up narrative, little mini short film type of videos. But they're all pretty entertaining. They were done quite well. I always like the Scout one, where he's messing with the blue Heavy. And then at the end of the video, the Heavy is dead or unconscious on the ground, and the Scout is just sitting on him, eating his sandwich. Ah, sandwich. A lot of this futuristic spy stuff here in the blue base as well. A lot of these, spy versus spy aesthetics going on here. Here we have the noble soldier, Probably my brother's favorite class, or the Scout. It was one of those two. In that he played them both a lot, but I don't remember which one was, technically his main, I guess, which one he had more hours in. He was a deadly soldier, though, I'll tell you that. So upstairs we can see some more of the blue technology, the blue chairs, large, very tactile buttons, a telephone, some screens, knobs, dials, that sort of thing. Everything all lit up, of course. Have to have illumination for
I think that that's pretty much the whole map. So we can start wandering our way back to the dam where we started.
And I'll just yap a little bit longer. I have a lot of love for Team Fortress 2. I spent many, many hours in it. I haven't played it in some time. In the comments of my last video, I heard that a lot of the issues the game was having have been cleaned up, like the bots and stuff. Which is great. I'm happy to hear that the game is still playable and doing okay. Even though I don't, spend time playing it anymore, it just makes me happy to know that it's still kicking. What's your favorite class in TF2? At the start of the developer commentary mode in TF2 here,
Gabe Newell has a sort of introductory section where he talks about TF2 and how happy he is for people to be getting their hands on it. And he
gives over his email as well so that people can contact him. I've heard that Gabe is pretty responsive to fans. I don't know if that's still the case, in the years since, I don't know, Valve just became like the world leader in so many ways of video game distribution and such an iconic company. But Gabe does give his email in the developer commentary, so if you want to shoot him off an email you can. But
the only reason that I bring that up is because at the end of that little developer commentary intro, Gabe says that his favorite class is the spy.
So his favorite class is the spy. My favorite class is probably the demo man. But I did enjoy a lot of them. The ones I played the least, probably Sniper at the bottom, then probably Soldier, then Heavy, I would imagine. Oh, you know what, Scout might have been down there too. Probably 3 and 4 were Scout and Heavy.
From most played down, it was probably Demo Man, Medic,
Spy was pretty high for me. I liked playing Spy a lot. And then maybe Engineer, I would imagine. Or maybe Pyro above Engineer. I do remember I liked to play Pyro as well.
but yeah, my top was probably Demo Man.
It'd be fun if I could find those old stats. I'm probably on saved on some Xbox 360 hard drive. Maybe buried in a cardboard box in my parents' house. But it would be fun to see those old playtimes maybe one day. If I'm sifting through those cardboard boxes to filter out the junk from the trash. treasures. Try plugging in all those old 360s and checking out what's on the hard drives. And I say all those old 360s because, well, we probably had, I know we had two, because we had a red ring of death that cooked one.
But anyway, I'm rambling, so I will let you go,
And not to subject you to my mindless trains of thought wandering hither and thither.
So, until next time, my friends, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to my supporters who voted for this video.
And until next time, my friends, please take care of yourselves, and I will do the same.